Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Front runners, boy, do we have a lot to get into today. Tons of transactions around the NBA taking place right before we shift into playoff mode. Heath, before we even get into it, why are we seeing so many players get waived and signed and all kinds of just relatively minor when we look at the grand scheme of the NBA, but lots of transactions, lots of movement happening today? Why? Why now?
Yeah, so what today there is a deadline that players have to clear waivers by the end of the season if you waive them when they're on an expiring contract. Because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have players stuck somewhere where a team's holding their free agent rights and maybe they don't want to be there or something like that. So if a player's on an expiring contract, they must be waived by today. Why it's today, I know there's a few days left in the season, but you have to clear the waivers. It's 48 hours to clear waivers. So if you waive them tomorrow, they wouldn't clear in time. So that's why. That's why it's today. So that's why you're seeing some of these guys we're going to call out today that just got waived. There was a handful of them. That's the reason why a handful of these guys are being waived today.
Right. Let's jump into it. There are a lot of, the Lakers did a few things. There's some new stuff in the
Yeah.
news. We're going to get into that, but let's save the Lakers stuff today. Let's start
Okay.
with Matisse Thybulle. Can't play in Toronto today. And as of right now, the 76ers would be headed for a first round matchup with the Raptors, which, I mean, we can assume he's unvaccinated and that's why he can't play in Toronto. And that would mean that he also wouldn't be able to play against the Raptors in the playoffs. I don't want to say that like swings the balance of power in the series, but it's kind of a big deal when you don't have your best perimeter defender against a team like the Raptors that can execute at a high level come playoff time.
Yeah, it just makes everything harder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could maybe argue of all their possible matchups, that might be the one to be missing him against. The Raptors don't necessarily have that high-powered wing player that they would put Thybulle on and say, go get him. That's just not the way their offense is built or structured. So that might be one of the things you could look at and say, all right, well, we got to do that. Also, I trust Toronto. What they'll do, much like the way Boston has played Philadelphia the last couple times out, they'll just play off him and they'll send their helps, their doubles off with whoever's guarding Matisse Thybulle. If he knocks down a whole bunch of jump shots and beats you, you tip your cap and you move on to the next game and then go from there. But that's why it might not be the worst thing to put Danny Green on the floor, maybe Furkan Korkmaz, open the floor up a little bit, just because I don't know. They don't have, again, that high-powered wing. You're going to say, all right, that will go make his life difficult for, the next 4 to 7 games with that. One other thing while we're on this topic, could be the situation for the Celtics too. We don't know for certain. All we do know is Ime Udoka, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford, Brown and Horford being two of the players in question, have all said, we'll be ready to go full roster with everybody who's healthy if the time comes to it. So we'll see what that means. But I've had a lot of people say, well, they'll wait and see what the matchup is. And if they need to, they'll go get the shot. It's not how it works. Yeah. You have to have your final dose. So whether you get the 2-shot sequence or you get the 1-shot, 2 weeks ahead of entry into Canada. And I'm coming to learn it's 2 weeks, but it's really 14 full days, which sounds weird, but that is 2 different things. So if you got it today, you wouldn't be able to go in until 14 full days have passed, which means you're entering on the 22nd.
Wow. That's
maybe time for game 4 of a first round playoff series. So we don't know exactly how this is all going to play out. I don't know what the playoff matchups are. Maybe this won't even end up mattering. But for now, that's something to keep an eye on. But we're kind of running out of that time to go get those shots and get that done. If those guys, that's what their thought process was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The clock is ticking there. Thybulle, I think Thybulle would be useful against, when you've got, look, they don't have a super high, they don't have Tatum or anything like that. But I mean, Scotty Barnes has been pretty tough to deal with. Pascal Siakam. These are bigger guys that maybe you switch somebody else over onto, but still, I think having him on the perimeter might matter. But I think you're right too. Maybe if you bring in some shooting like a Danny Green, you can mitigate that issue.
You might be able to offset it on the other end of the floor. Yeah. I think where it matters is Thybulle's a guy you could put on Van Vliet.
True.
at the end of halves, end of clock scenario, end of game scenarios, obviously, and say, hey, we've got that covered. Now that does leave you a little exposed because then that means Maxey, who's one of their closers, needs to be on somebody else. But yeah, it's one of those things. I just don't know that it's a complete game changer. But now you watch tonight, the Raptors will probably eat them up on the perimeter and go. Those two teams play tonight, so we're going to get a little bit of a potential sneak preview to see what that looks like. But we're kind of getting into this weird spot in the schedule too. We were talking about right before we started recording. Like Boston's not playing Jason Tatum and Al Horford tonight in Milwaukee. Right. OG Anunoby's going to be out again for Toronto. We're seeing other teams sick guys. PJ Tucker came down with a calf injury that's going to hold him up, but they think he'll be ready for the playoffs. So just some things to consider. What matchups look like they might be really good right now may not end up playing out that way, just as different players sit.
Absolutely. Something to keep an eye on, particularly if you're a sports bettor. Yeah, keep a real close eye on that. Terry Taylor joins Washington. Let's just get into it. There's a bunch of minor moves that we've got going on here. Terry Taylor and Dwayne Washington get converted from two-way contracts for the Indiana Pacers. Again, there's going to be a number of teams that are doing stuff like this, so they're going to convert them and perhaps hang on to them for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well earned for those two players. Terry Taylor is one of the more unique guys in the league. He's only about 6'5", but he plays like kind of prime Shaquille O'Neal. Doesn't take shots outside of the paint. Very, very rarely. He takes about 1 3-pointer a game. And, so yeah, it's very good to see reward these guys who have been kind of there doing this stuff for you because of the two-way rules changing again because of third straight, pandemic impacted season. They allowed these two-way guys to play the whole way. So yeah, and they're going to get an extra year. Both of them that they're probably guys the Pacers may bring back next season. We'll see what that looks like. And then the Pacers did waive Kiefer Sykes. He was a kind of a fun story guy who kind of made his way up the roster with them, but it is what it is with that. And then as we flip to the other end, they are now bringing in to replace Taylor and Washington. They're bringing in Nate Hinton and Gabe York on two-way contracts for the last handful of games of the season here. So, and those guys have done really good work for their G League team. Do you know what their G League team's name is?
I don't off the top of my head.
The Fort Wayne
Mad Ants. Yes. Yeah, as soon as you said Fort Wayne, I got it. That's an awesome name.
Pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, the G League, man, they cornered the market on cool team
names.
That's right. Not quite. Remember the old days of the D League when it was like the Low Gators and the Rim Rockers and all that stuff? I know. Those ones were a little silly, but these ones are pretty good. So, but yeah, I like when teams do this at the end of seasons to reward guys. Just, hey, thanks for your work all year. We're going to get you in here. And for guys like Gabe York and Nate Hinton, gets them an additional year of service. So if they do catch on with the team later, they can make that much more money. And that's also an important thing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of the original D-League names, and I think like the Lakers, I thought was kind of lame. They just went with defenders. Come on.
Yeah.
But some of them reminded me of like back in the day of slam ball and stuff like that. Like they were of that vein. It was pretty cool.
No doubt. The Arsenal, I think, was one of them, right? Something like that, yeah.
Let's see. Let's go to the Wolves. They're going to steal Greg Monroe away from the Jazz. They're going to sign him for the remainder of the year. It was on a 10-day with Utah, and Greg Monroe will find a landing spot. I would assume just more opportunity. He felt like with the Wolves, but that's where he'll be for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, we've got an open roster spot. Let's fill it. Let's make sure we're covered in case anything happens up front. So they'll have their full front line. Our center spot will be Karl Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, and Greg Monroe. Monroe played well for Minnesota during the whole COVID stretch when a bunch of guys were being shuffled around the league entirely. So yeah. So there it is. We'll see where that goes for them. But yeah, they took him away. He was just finished a 10-day with Utah, and there was some thought he may stick in Utah, and he may have stayed there because Utah's without Udoka Azubuike, who was their third string center. But sounds like Greg Monroe, maybe he would rather be in Minnesota. I don't know what the situation was. Maybe Utah didn't want to go. But yeah, that's where we're at for now.
He was tired of being caught in between the hatred between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. He was stuck in a difficult position. He just said, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going back to Minnesota. That has to be what happened.
Yeah, that's it.
RJ Nembhard was waived by the Cavs. Keith, you were a little bit surprised by this one, but we're speculating that maybe that's making some room for Moses Brown.
Yeah, so they had done a full sequence of moves in recent weeks where Moses Brown was on a 10-day, Nembhard was on a 2-way, then 2-way Nembhard got converted, Brown signed to a 2-way. My guess is now they know they might not have Jared Allen for maybe the play-in, maybe the playoffs if they get there. It does sound like Evan Mobley will be back for the next game, so that's huge, and that's really welcome news. But you need one more big. Yeah. Nembhard's clearly the last guy on the roster. And once again, as a reminder, 2-way players are not playoff eligible. That's going to come up in a couple more of these transactions that we're going to discuss as well. So get Moses Brown converted over there and get him into your lineup. He's been starting for them over the last week while both Allen and Mobley have been out.
Right. We already did that one. Skylar Mays was converted by the Hawks.
Yeah, another guy, second year of a 2-way contract with Atlanta. This screams, hey, thank you for your work and your effort. We don't have anything else to fill out the roster with. Let's take care of one of our own. Get you on here. Then he'll be playoff or play-in eligible, maybe playoffs if the Hawks go that far. I'm going to throw one more out there because I know we forgot to put it on the sheet. DeAndre Bembry waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Bucks are going to reopen a roster spot and they'll have an opportunity to fill that. Bembry, if we remember back, was signed by the Bucks after being waived by the Nets at the trade deadline, and then immediately, I think, tore an ACL, but at least has a knee injury. That's going to keep him out for the rest of the year.
All right. Let's jump over to a little bit of a surprise here. The Nets have waived James Johnson, but they did it to convert Kessler Edwards. And Kessler Edwards has been picking up a bigger and bigger role for the Nets as the season has gone on. So not a surprise when you see who it is that they're bringing in. I liked, in fact, what he was doing last night for the Nets against the Knicks. But they waived veteran James Johnson in order to bring him up.
Yeah, he started a lot of games this year for the Nets. He's primarily a wing with good size that can shoot. So kind of becoming their pseudo Joe Harris-ish kind of guy for them. But yeah, he's a guy that the Nets needed to get converted because he's become a key rotation player. He was their first guy off their bench last night in that Knicks game. And again, 2-way players not eligible. So you got to get him onto the regular roster. There was no easy cut to be made in Brooklyn because I don't think they wanted to go into any of their front court depth with guys like Aldridge or Blake Griffin. So, and then everybody else is too important or signed long term. So that makes it James Johnson. It had to be him.
Let's get over to the Suns. They waived Frank the Tank Kaminsky. He lost a roster spot. We've seen Bismack Biyombo become a bigger and bigger part of their rotation, or a more solidified part of their rotation, I should say. So just was not really much of an opportunity there with DeAndre Ayton and, of course, JaVale McGee already solidified in their spots.
Yeah, Kaminsky, too, he's really struggling to get back from an injury. Suffered this year, has not been able to get healthy. So they waive him. They're likely, my guess is to convert Ishmael Wainwright to take that spot. And that'll give him one more wing with size. Again, a 2-way player. He's been with Phoenix all year on a 2-way. That's going to be the direction they go. Convert him over, get him onto the roster. Probably not going to have an impact the rest of the way. Let's be real about it. But if anything was to happen to Torrey Craig or Mikal Bridges or Landry Shamet, you can put Wainwright out there and say, hey, at least play some defense, do what you do, and go from there. But yeah, tough kid. He was a tough cut for the Raptors at the end of the regular season, and he caught on with the Suns on a 2-way, and good to see him elevated to the main roster at the end of the year.
That's right. They're in a tough spot in the playoffs. They might say, call me Ishmael. God, that was awful. That was awful. Yeah. Awful.
Cut that.
I'm going to cut that out.
Show's
terrible.
Over. That's it. Guys, thanks for the good run. This is the last recording of Front Office Show. I'm out.
That's it. I'm done. Rick Carlisle will coach next season, not move to the front office. Apparently, there were some rumors that he may decide to make that jump up to the front office. Instead, said nope. He is going to continue being on the bench and coaching.
To be clear, the Indiana Pacers front office, not Front Office Show to replace me after your terrible jokes.
Oh, I figured it would be him replacing me. If anything, Keith is like, that's it.
All right. Well, I mean, maybe now I need to make a call to my good friend Rick Carlisle and see. No, this is Rick Carlisle, as he put it, he basically, it wasn't a rant. It was kind of almost a monologue of, I'm a coach and I signed up here to coach. And if we're rebuilding, we're rebuilding. I'm good with that. I've been through rebuilds before. Let's go. I'm committed to this, and let's see. I also think the Pacers are not signed up necessarily for a 3-year rebuild here. Yeah. I think this is one where they're going to try to turn this fairly quickly.
Absolutely. Agreed. All right. Lakers time. LeBron James wants to play with Steph Curry. Let's just throw that out there.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, he said it. The only reason why, just coming from the Lakers perspective, the only reason why I even mentioned this, because it was a very just kind of, off the cuff thing. Like, hey, who would you like to play with? First he says, Bronny, I want to play with my son. Okay, cool. Who's in the NBA?
Which is his now standard.
Exactly.
Whenever he's asked this question.
Bronny, when somebody uses a first round pick on him and then he winks at the camera. But Steph Curry, he said, again, not a surprise. Hey, I want to play with good players. But it just sounds similar to what he said a few years ago, right before the trade deadline, when he was again innocently asked, hey, who would you like to play with in the NBA? And he said, Anthony Davis. And then lo and behold, that happened. Only reason why I mention it, but I think it's very unlikely. And if it were to happen, it would be LeBron asking the Lakers for a trade and then somehow winding up in Golden State. It wouldn't be Golden State sending Steph Curry to the Lakers. That's not going to be happening.
Nope. Andrew Wiggins, future Laker.
There it is.
We're almost there salary match wise. Andrew Wiggins and James Wiseman for LeBron. Who wins? Who says no? Isn't that what they do on Twitter and everywhere? Who says no? It's this is more, I looked at this as more of a LeBron showing respect to Steph Curry thing than any kind of, recruiting or anything like that. This just didn't seem how that was. There are times when you can, if you go watch it, it was on The Shop, is where he said this, his show on, I think that's on HBO. Yeah. You can watch it there. And when you listen to it, that's how it played to me, was just because he started out with, man, there's a lot of good MFers in this league. Keeping it clean for our YouTube audience, because that's not what he used as wording. I don't think anyway, if I remember back to it. But yeah, it was in the clips already out there too, which is how it got out there. But yeah, I'm not taking anything beyond it. Than that.
I don't think there's anything to worry about there. And then Steph Curry already responded to it and said, well, he got to play with me on the All-Star team the last couple of times because he picked me. So
yeah, exactly.
The Lakers make a move. They waive Trevor Ariza. Now, we don't know, as of this recording, we don't know what exactly they're going to do with that roster spot. We know they've made it official. The team has officially announced it and everything. Ariza has been waived.
Yep.
I'd imagine what I'm anticipating happening is they're going to use that to convert Wenyen Gabriel. But again, as of this moment, that has not happened yet.
I agree. I think that's where that goes as well. I think the important thing to note here is, while these players on expiring deals had to be waived today, you can sign players all the way up into and including Sunday. You can do that. Remember back 2 years in a row, Dante Jones was the last day of the season signing by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't think they're going the veteran route. I'm with you. I think it'll be Wenyen Gabriel. He's played pretty well for the Lakers. As we were talking before the show, he plays really hard, which has been in short supply for LA for large chunks of this year. So yeah, I think the idea here is just go and push in all the way and see where this goes. So yeah, I think that is the thing for Wenyen Gabriel. Then you get him for next year. He's already under contract. You don't have to deal with free agency, any of that stuff. So good move by the Lakers. If he's a player you like, do what you can to retain him. It's not going to cost them anything.
Now, our buddy Eric Pincus threw out there on Twitter that the Lakers could offer him a 3-year deal instead of a 2-year deal. I know we said we wanted to discuss why that is the case. So what's the story there, Keith?
Yeah, no. So this is important too. And you can only sign a player to a minimum exception contract as long as you're not hard capped. You can only sign a player to a 1 or 2-year minimum deal. Every team in the league can do that. We see those all the time. If you want to give a guy more years than that, so you want to give him 3 or 4 years on a minimum contract, you have to either use cap space or an exception to do so. The Lakers have it had in full, it prorates down, but in full, they after going all year, they've had about 800,000 or so of their taxpayer mid-level, because they only gave 5 million of it to Kendrick Nunn. So now that's prorated down quite a bit. So they're able to use what's left of that. If they wanted to give Gabriel a deal that runs longer than 2 years, there was some thought that might be how they handled Stanley Johnson, but at the time they signed him, that was going to be tricky to pull off math-wise and those kind of things. It wouldn't shock me if that's the way it went. I also don't know that they want to lock in longer, but that could be a way to say, hey, give us 2 non-guaranteed years. We'll give you a little bit of bump for the rest of this year in your pay, because that'll also give him a bump over the 3-day contract he would sign for the rest of the season. So yeah, that's my guess, is that's how that goes.
And this is a mistake, honestly, that the Lakers made with Austin Reeves and Talen Horton-Tucker. They neglected to go the 3-year route, instead going just 2 years, when they could have done other things in order to make those 3 years, and they wound up having to pay Talen Horton-Tucker a year early, and then Austin Reeves will be a free agent in 2023 rather than 2024, which would have been the case had they given him a 3-year deal. So maybe they will go the 3-year route if they learn their lesson here and they take that approach with Wendy and Gabriel. Was not the only news that we got today, though. Far from it.
No.
Anthony Davis also responded to trade rumors today. Just gave the pretty standard veteran answer, though. Not a ton to analyze here, but just basically said, this is not in my control here. This is a Clutch Sports front office thing. That's what my agent does. I'm not going to worry about this. I like it here. And that's it. And then just said, my job's to play basketball. So he really just kind of deflected.
Yep.
But, it's gotten to a point to where there have been enough rumors floating about that even AD is being asked about them.
Yeah, and I think his answer is the standard and correct one to give of, hey, it's out of my control. It is what it is. I continue to believe he's not going to be traded. I just don't think that's where that'll be. But let's you never want to rule anything out, right? Crazy stuff happens. So like Russell Westbrook getting traded 3 consecutive off seasons and maybe a 4th.
So
segue.
Yeah, I like it. So Mark Stein of his fabulous Substack said that Russell Westbrook, that a team to watch in a Westbrook trade, first of all, confirmed that yes, the Lakers would like to trade Russell Westbrook. I know, shocking, right? But
I'm blown away.
Like we've been hearing rumors that, okay, Russ probably wants to go too. And Stein kind of said, well, maybe we don't really know exactly where he stands there, whether or not he wants to go. But that it's pretty clear that, like, hey, the Lakers are going to try to trade him. Even if Russ feels somewhere deep down that he would like to try this again next year with AD and LeBron, he knows the Lakers are going to try to trade him this offseason. The John Wall thing, Stein mentioned that. I think we can just kind of check that off the list real quick here. He mentioned that we'll probably start hearing about that again this summer, which is what we've been saying ever since the trade deadline, that could be something that pops back up. But then he said that the Hornets are a team to watch on the Westbrook trade front, with the reason being that the Hornets are going to have to pay Miles Bridges this summer. They're going to have to start preparing for giving an extension to LaMelo Ball, which would certainly be a max extension. And so when you've got that kind of money that's going to be going out in the near future, you might want to clear future salary. And so you might look at doing that with a guy like Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, Russell Westbrook, $47 million expiring. And then you can free up some future cap room that way. And so that's kind of the thought process here, is that the Hornets would clear future cap space. The Lakers would absorb longer term salary in players that ideally would be a better fit than Russell Westbrook.
So anyone in the league.
Well, anyone that's not on an expiring contract, right? I mean, that's
I'm being
that's really the only thing they can offer you. It's either you're going to attach picks to Russ, or you're going to offer some sort of salary cap relief by presenting Russ as an expiring contract.
So here's my question: if I'm from the Hornets side, is you're going to have 2 things. One is, can we play him with LaMelo Ball? That's my first question, because if the answer to that is no, then don't do it. Even a year,
do it.
Is just not worth it.
Do it, Mitch. Do it, Mitch. You're our old friend,
them, right? That's gonna start, right? Yeah,
that's gonna become a thing.
I will also say too, right? So let's say your answer is yes. Then your next question is, do we think we could get second half Washington Wizards?
Correct.
Russell Westbrook. If you think that's the answer then. All right. No, the answer 2. Then my last question, which is probably the more important than maybe the first two, is this, do we need to get off Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier's money? Is Rozier's money bad money? I
don't think so.
Think
no.
so for how he's played. Hayward, I know it seems odd to put it this way, but next year he'll only have one more year left. Then you flip it to the other side. If I was the Lakers, if I could do it just for Terry Rozier, done.
Sure.
Done. Not even a question. Hayward could be a really helpful guy for them, because he can shoot. That's the difference. You can play him off the ball and he can shoot. You could really, if you could turn Westbrook into those two guys, even if you had to still throw a pick, just because, I would do it if I was the Lakers, because now I've turned it into two guys who can really help me, and now we've got something going, right? We've talked. You got to split that contract up into smaller ones, and off.
And to be clear, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but what Stein presented was Hayward or Rozier plus Kelly Oubre would be the other piece going in there with one of those two. He didn't say both. Maybe it does get amended to both. Maybe because there's some bigger salaries. Maybe it's those two guys and then Westbrook and THT or something. I don't know. I'd have to look at how all the math breaks down. But the bottom line is that's the basic framework, would be some combination of Hayward or Rozier plus Kelly Oubre. Maybe it winds up being Hayward and Rozier, whatever. But yes, I'm in agreement. I would do it too if I'm the Lakers, particularly a team that struggled with wing depth. Hayward could check that box, and then Rozier has already proven he can play off ball. So, to
be fair, he's probably going to check that box for 60 or so games.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we're now to the point with Gordon Hayward where if he plays in more than 60 games in a season, I'm going to be pretty surprised. He can't make it through. It's just recurrence of a lot of the same kind of injuries over and over again. So I wonder, and that's where it gets a little tricky. I think the on-court fits become far better. Even Rozier is a point guard who's used to playing the position without having the ball a lot from his time in Boston and in Charlotte. But I do you got to build out your depth because you're going to be missing games. I mean, Hayward, LeBron, and AD, that's three guys I don't feel good about playing more than 60, 65 games in a season. At this point, you got to have something. And it can't be.
You would need depth, and you would have to, fingers crossed, hope that they played in congruency, right? They play at the same time, because LeBron, Russ, and AD have played I think it's 21 games or something this season together. So, it's not necessarily it's on if they're healthy on court, it's a fit, but that injury factor is certainly something you have to consider.
Now, I just, to be fair, don't do this if you're Charlotte. It's you don't need to get off that money. Yes, you're going to be expensive for a year or two, but that's fine. These guys are not on Hayward's contract isn't great. So if you can get off Hayward and throw, Oubre or Plumlee and do it, then maybe, but I don't know, man, just keep building with what you have. Don't try and go this direction. That's not money you got to get off of that badly. That's just my
Keith.
Thought. Yeah.
Don't listen to him, Mitch. Don't listen to him.
Remember the good days, Mitch.
Remember all the great times we had, Mitch. We will tell you what, Mitch, do the deal and we will forgive you for Dang and Mozgov. How about that? We'll put that on the table.
Well, that's all. That one's done. Does that? I mean, I know you've been saying that you're looking forward to July 1st. Are you throwing a party for the expiration of the
100%? I've been asked that question. I mean, literally, I've been asked that hundreds of times over the last few years. When does Luol Deng expire? Can the Lakers trade that? I've got it in I've got a notification set on my phone to like an alarm to go off. Luol Deng's contract is off the books. It's going to be a thing. We're gonna celebrate. Amazing. We have to celebrate something. So
hang a banner
that's
for
right.
that.
That's right. Last thing, Stein does mention that the Lakers, and this is contrary to some other reports that we've heard, the Lakers have not ruled out, if they can't find a palatable trade, waiving and stretching Russell Westbrook, particularly if they feel like it increases the possibility of them hanging on to Malik Monk. And that's something we've talked about on here. that dang salary coming off and then just adding what 15-ish somewhere in that, depending on what exactly how it goes down, but somewhere around 15-ish or so million for the next 3 years in dead money. That hurts, but it's something that the Lakers aren't completely taking off the table.
Do not, as much as I just said, Charlotte, don't do a trade for Russ. Do not do this if you're the Lakers. This is a bad idea, because what you're running into there is, if LeBron doesn't do an extension, you're set up really clean with the cap sheet moving forward. I mean, you might have AD and Horton Tucker, and that's it after next season, depending how you structure obviously the rest of your moves and stuff. You don't need $15 million in dead money sitting on the books. We saw the dang $5 million caused
problems.
A lot of problems building out this roster over the last few seasons. Now, one of the years it didn't matter, they won a championship, but other years it made it difficult to even get LeBron there in the first place. They had to do some maneuvering to make that happen. Do not do this. This is a really, really horrible idea. It is not. It's not that bad. I know that you can't go through another season like you just went through. Find another way. You know, it's we're very fond with our daughter's soccer team when they get trapped with the ball and they want to go where they want to go, of saying, find another way, find another way, make it work, find another way, make it work, find another way. Do not stretch Westbrook. It's a horrible idea. 15, 16 million on the books per year over the next 3 seasons. Bad. It's just going to make a mess of things.
That would be particularly brutal. The hope is that you can figure out some other way to retain Malik Monk, if you can, figure something out. But
I don't even care if it costs you Malik Monk. It's, hope he goes and signs a 1-year deal again somewhere, and then you can get him back 2 years later. I don't stretching money when it's the final move to clear the cap space to go sign a max guy, trade for a max guy who's going to put you over the top, fine. But in this case, unless you have a really good plan for 2023, 2024, and no, just bad idea. Don't do it.
I don't think it's the ideal situation either, or something the Lakers should really be considering. The option number one is got to be figuring out some kind of a trade with Russ and then going from there.
And somebody will do it. Somebody will do a trade. I would rather trade a first round pick than stretch money. Cap space and available flexibility money-wise is worth more than a draft pick will ever be to the Los Angeles Lakers. It's just matter of fact for where they are right now, where they're going to be in the next couple of years. It's a really bad idea, because can't you envision 2 years from now, LeBron's gone, AD's not happy, and now we can't do stuff because we have this $15 million albatross on the books. I hate it. I hate the whole idea.
It would definitely be a problem, and it would be something we would be lamenting years from now. But for the Lakers, the other piece to that, you mentioned LeBron with that extension and all of that. That's also been what's been going around, is that, hey, the Lakers are going to expect some communication from LeBron before July. Like, hey, if we go do stuff to try to fix all this, we need something from you. We need to know what you're doing come August if we're going to go do this, which makes sense.
And this is where LeBron, you know me, I always say this, he exercises a superstar right of, let's see what you do first. Then we'll see where I want to go. Right. I mean, because the reality is, before he can even sign the extension, they have to be done with, basically the bulk of the offseason will be over by the time he's actually eligible. Now, I'm not stupid. We all know how that works. That could be worked out. They could already be worked out for all we know of doing it. But yes, it's it's
gonna be an eventful off season for the Lakers, and it was kind of cool today that we got this flurry of moves too, just to kind of give us a little bit of transaction stuff to dive into right before we get fully into playoff mode. All right. Well, I think we can finish things up there. Everybody, appreciate so much you guys joining us. And of course, all the support we've gotten over on the NBA Front Office YouTube channel, as well as the podcast. Certainly appreciate all of you. Make sure you are subscribing in both places. If you're not already, don't forget, give us that 5-star review and rating over on Apple Podcasts. That's a great way to help out the show. And of course, subscribe and turn on notifications on the YouTube channel as well. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and see ya.